Attention! What if I told you that some of the vegetables you consider the sacred pillar of a healthy diet could be secretly, silently weaving a web of risk for your heart, especially if you've already crossed the significant threshold of 60? It sounds like a paradox, a direct contradiction to everything we've been taught, right? We've been indoctrinated with the idea that a plate overflowing with colorful vegetables is a passport to vitality and longevity. And in the vast majority of cases, that statement is correct. However, there is a deeper truth, a truth that often slips through the cracks of quick medical consultations and generic nutrition advice, and it's this. As our body ages, its internal machinery, its biochemistry, radically changes the way it processes certain natural compounds. What was a harmless and beneficial nutrient in our youth can now transform into a conflicting factor, interacting dangerously with essential medications or overloading organ systems that no longer operate with the impeccable efficiency of yesteryear. We are not talking about poisons or creating a list of forbidden foods. We are talking about acquiring a more sophisticated and nuanced knowledge, an understanding that can mean the difference between a full and healthy old age and the sudden onset of cardiac complications that seem to appear out of nowhere. Inspired by the revolutionary philosophy of Dr. William Lee, who teaches us to see food as a medicine we can administer daily. Today, we are going to unveil the secrets hidden in the vegetable aisle, secrets that everyone over 60 must know to shield and protect the engine of their life, their heart. But before we dive into these 5 critical points that could change the way you see your plate, if you find this information valuable for protecting your health and that of your loved ones, I ask for a small but powerful gesture that helps us tremendously to keep going. Please give this video a like and, most importantly, subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you not only give us your support to continue creating vital content like this, but you also ensure you don't miss any of our future revelations, which could be crucial for your well-being. Click the subscription button now and activate the notification bell. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Now, get ready, because we are about to dismantle some of the most deeply rooted myths in the world of nutrition. Before we roll out our list, it's absolutely essential that we establish a solid context. Why does this topic become so critically and specifically relevant for the population over 60? The answer is not simple. It lies in a complex convergence of physiological and medical factors that strongly manifest in this stage of life. First, the natural and inevitable process of aging affects the intrinsic function of our organs. The kidneys, for example, which are our body's master filters responsible for cleansing the blood of waste and excess, can become progressively less efficient. This decline in the glomerular filtration rate, GFR, as it's technically known, means that substances that were once excreted without the slightest problem, like certain minerals, can now begin to accumulate in the bloodstream to levels that can be toxic. Second, our digestive system also undergoes a significant transformation. The production of stomach acid, essential for breaking down food and absorbing key nutrients, can decrease, a condition called hypochlorhydria. Simultaneously, the gut microbiota, that vast and complex community of trillions of beneficial bacteria that inhabits our intestines and acts as a second brain, is altered, profoundly changing the way we absorb and metabolize nutrients from the food we eat. And third, and perhaps the most determining factor, is that from this age the prevalence of using chronic medications skyrockets. Millions of people depend daily on drugs to control hypertension, diabetes, cholesterol, or to prevent blood clots. These life-saving medications can have very specific, potent, and often underestimated interactions with compounds present in foods we consider the epitome of health. Therefore, the simplistic approach of eat more vegetables without any nuance or personalization can be, paradoxically, an incomplete and even counterproductive strategy. This is not about instilling fear of vegetables, but about promoting a transition to a more sophisticated and personalized nutritional knowledge. It's the step from a black and white view to one in high definition and full color, where we come to understand that each food has a unique biochemical profile that interacts differently with our own unique biology. With this foundation firmly established, let's explore the first hidden danger lurking in your salad. Number 1. Potassium, the double-edged electrolyte. Potassium is, without a doubt, a mineral that is absolutely essential for life. It is a vital electrolyte that plays a leading role in almost every aspect of our physiology. It acts as the great regulator of fluid balance inside and outside our cells, allows nerves to transmit their electrical impulses, and, most relevant to our discussion, is fundamental for muscle contraction, including the most important and hard-working muscle of all, the heart. A diet rich in potassium is strongly associated with lower blood pressure, as it helps our body excrete excess sodium, its counterpart. For this reason, doctors and nutritionists worldwide actively promote the consumption of foods like bananas, avocados, tomatoes, and, of course, the ubiquitous spinach. However, this is precisely where the narrative becomes complicated and potentially dangerous for people over 60. The popular maxim, "if some is good, more is better," completely falls apart when we talk about potassium, especially in a scenario where kidney function has begun its natural decline. As we mentioned, this process, known as a reduced glomerular filtration rate, is a common part of aging. Young, healthy kidneys excrete any excess potassium with amazing efficiency, maintaining balance effortlessly. But when the kidneys, our high-tech filters, are no longer operating at 100% capacity, this mineral can begin to accumulate dangerously in the blood, leading to a serious and potentially lethal medical condition called hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia is a silent and formidable adversary of the heart. Elevated levels of potassium in the blood directly interfere with the delicate electrical signaling that orchestrates every heartbeat. This can lead to irregular and dangerous cardiac arrhythmias, which feel like palpitations or a fluttering heart, profound muscle weakness, flaccid paralysis, and even, in the most severe and acute cases, sudden cardiac arrest. The real hidden danger, the trap, lies in the interaction of a high-potassium diet with some of the most commonly prescribed medications for the heart. Millions of people over 60 take daily blood pressure medications like ACE inhibitors, whose generic names end in pril, such as lisinopril or enalapril, or angiotensin II receptor blockers, also known as ARBs, whose generic names end in sartan, such as losartan or valsartan. These drugs are excellent for protecting the heart and kidneys from the ravages of hypertension. But one of their most well-known side effects is that they cause the body to retain potassium. Imagine this very common scenario. A well-intentioned 65-year-old, newly diagnosed with hypertension, decides to take control of their health and radically improve their diet. They start their day with a large green smoothie loaded with spinach and kale. For lunch, they prepare a huge salad with tomato, avocado, and lentils. And for dinner, they enjoy a salmon fillet with a baked potato, skin on. All of this while diligently taking their blood pressure medication. Without having the slightest idea, they are creating the perfect storm. Their body, on one hand, is actively retaining potassium due to the medication, and on the other hand, is receiving a massive intake of the same mineral through their new, super-healthy diet. The result can be an induced hyperkalemia that manifests with vague symptoms like extreme fatigue, nausea, or palpitations. Symptoms that can easily be dismissed as just part of getting older. All to which vegetables are particularly high in potassium. The list is extensive, but some of the most notable and common include spinach, both raw and cooked, with cooked being more concentrated by volume; Swiss chard, potatoes and sweet potatoes, especially with their skin; tomatoes and all their derivatives; sauce, paste, ketchup; avocados, winter squashes, and legumes like lentils, beans, and chickpeas. The solution is not to banish these incredibly nutritious foods, but to arm yourself with knowledge. The key is moderation and fluid, honest communication with your doctor. If you are taking any of the aforementioned medications, it is absolutely crucial that your doctor periodically monitors your blood potassium levels and that you talk to them about your dietary habits. Sometimes, simple cooking techniques like boiling potatoes or spinach and discarding the water can significantly reduce their potassium content as the mineral leaches into the liquid. Knowledge, not elimination, is your best and most powerful defense. Number 2. Vitamin K, the master of coagulation and its conflict with anticoagulants. Vitamin K is another of our nutrition's unsung heroes. Its most well-known and vital function is the regulation of a construction site, the body's emergency repair manager. When you get a cut, vitamin K activates a cascade of proteins, known as clotting factors, which assemble at the site of the injury to form a clot and effectively stop the bleeding. Without enough vitamin K, even a small wound could become a serious bleeding problem. Furthermore, more recent research has revealed that this vitamin is also crucial for bone health, helping calcium to bind to bones and not to arteries, and for cardiovascular health, actively preventing the calcification of arteries, a very significant risk factor for heart attacks. Dark leafy green vegetables are the undisputed superstars of vitamin K. Kale, spinach, Swiss chard, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and parsley are absolutely packed with this nutrient. And here, once again, we encounter a critical paradox for heart health in the elderly. Numerous heart conditions, such as atrial fibrillation, a type of arrhythmia that increases the risk of stroke, the presence of mechanical heart valves, or a history of deep vein thrombosis or pulmonary embolism, require the use of anticoagulant medications, commonly known as blood thinners. The most classic, inexpensive, and widely used for decades is warfarin, exerts its effect precisely by antagonizing the action of vitamin K. It blocks an enzyme in the liver that is necessary to recycle and reuse vitamin K, thereby reducing the production of clotting factors and making the blood less sticky and less prone to forming dangerous clots. The goal of warfarin therapy is to maintain a very delicate and precise balance, which is measured by a blood test called the INR, International Normalized Ratio. A too low INR means the blood is too thick and the risk of forming a clot, a stroke, for example, is high. A too high INR means the blood is too thin and the risk of suffering a major bleed increases dramatically. Herein lies the hidden danger: consistency. The fundamental problem is not eating vegetables rich in vitamin K. In fact, it is nutritionally important to continue doing so. The problem arises with drastic and sudden fluctuations in your whose warfarin dose has been carefully calibrated by their cardiologist based on their usual, stable diet. One day, this person watches a documentary about the amazing benefits of green smoothies and, with the best of intentions, decides to start drinking a huge one every morning, loaded with kale, spinach, and parsley. Suddenly, their vitamin K intake skyrockets to stratospheric levels. This flood of vitamin K will overwhelm the blocking effect of warfarin, causing their blood to become thicker and their INR to plummet below the therapeutic range. Unknowingly, they will be dramatically increasing their risk of suffering a stroke or thrombosis, the very catastrophes the medication is designed to prevent. The opposite scenario is equally dangerous. If a person who regularly consumes large leafy green salads goes on vacation, gets sick, or simply changes their habits and stops eating them for a week, their vitamin K intake will plummet. Their warfarin dose, which was set for a high intake, will now be too potent. Their blood will become too thin. Their INR will shoot up, and their risk of suffering a serious internal hemorrhage, such as a cerebral or gastrointestinal bleed, will increase dangerously. Therefore, the key message for anyone taking warfarin or similar anticoagulants is not to avoid leafy green vegetables. That would be a serious nutritional mistake. The message is consistency. You must strive to maintain a relatively stable and predictable intake of vitamin K day after day, week after week. If you decide to make a significant change in your diet, such as starting a new salad regimen or stopping it, it is absolutely imperative
You will
that
very
you
likely
speak with
need
your
to
doctor
adjust your
first.
warfarin
Dose and monitor your INR much more frequently during that transition period. Open and honest communication with your healthcare team transforms this hidden danger into a completely manageable factor in your comprehensive wellness plan. Number 3. Oxalates. Small crystals, big problems. Oxalates, or oxalic acid, are organic compounds found completely naturally in a vast range of plants. In the plant kingdom, they serve as an ingenious defense mechanism, protecting the plant from being eaten by insects, pests, and animals. In the human body, oxalates have no known beneficial function and, in most people, are processed and excreted through the urine without causing the slightest problem. Foods we consider incredibly healthy, such as spinach, beets, Swiss chard, rhubarb, nuts, especially almonds, and cocoa powder, are extraordinarily rich in oxalates. Primarily manifests in their potent ability to bind to minerals, especially calcium. When oxalate binds to calcium in the digestive tract, they form an insoluble compound, calcium oxalate, that is eliminated through the feces. This, in fact, is not a problem and can even be beneficial, as it reduces the amount of oxalate absorbed into the body. However, the problem arises when oxalate is absorbed alone into the bloodstream and then travels to the kidneys to be filtered and eliminated. Once in the kidneys, if the concentration of both oxalate and calcium in the urine is very high and the urine is very saturated, usually due to dehydration, they can form sharp, needle-like crystals of calcium oxalate. These crystals are the main component of more than 75% of all kidney stones. For the general population, the risk is moderate. For people over 60, several factors conspire to drastically increase this risk. First, as we've already repeated, kidney function may be diminished, which hinders the kidney's ability to keep these compounds diluted and eliminate them effectively. Second, dehydration is much more common in the elderly population, either because the thirst mechanism becomes less acute with age or due to mobility issues, and more concentrated urine is the perfect breeding ground for stone formation. Third, and very importantly, a person with a previous history of calcium oxalate kidney stones is extremely susceptible to forming more in the future. The formation and passage of a kidney stone is an incredibly painful and debilitating experience. But what is the direct connection to the heart? The connection is multifaceted and very important. On one hand, the acute stress and pain of a renal colic can temporarily raise blood pressure to dangerous levels. More importantly, kidney health and heart health are intrinsically linked in what modern medicine calls the cardiorenal syndrome. The kidneys and the heart are inseparable partners. What affects one inevitably affects the other. Chronically stressed or diseased kidneys contribute to high blood pressure, fluid retention, and systemic inflammation, all of which are direct and potent risk factors for heart disease. Suffering from recurrent episodes of kidney stones places a significant and chronic burden on the renal system, which, in the long run, can have very negative consequences for the health of our heart. Furthermore, there is a fascinating emerging theory suggesting that oxalate crystals don't just deposit in the kidneys. In particularly susceptible individuals, they could deposit in other body tissues, such as the joints, causing a type of arthritis, blood vessels, or even the heart tissue itself, provoking a localized and chronic inflammatory response. Chronic inflammation is a well-known and established culprit in the development and progression of atherosclerosis, the hardening and narrowing of the arteries. If you have a history of calcium oxalate kidney stones, or if your doctor has informed you that you have compromised kidney function, it is crucial that you be very aware of your intake of oxalate-rich vegetables. Spinach, despite being a superfood in many other respects, is one of the most concentrated sources. Once again, the solution is not prohibition, but smart management. Drinking plenty of water throughout the day is the most important strategy of all to keep urine diluted and prevent crystallization. Cooking oxalate-rich vegetables, especially by boiling or steaming them, can reduce their oxalate content by up to 50 to 90%, as these compounds leach into the cooking water, which, of course, should be discarded. Additionally, consuming these foods along with a source of calcium, like a dairy product or a calcium citrate supplement with the meal, can help the oxalate bind to calcium in the gut rather than in the kidneys, neutralizing the risk. Number 4. Goitrogens and thyroid health. An indirect but powerful link to the heart. The thyroid gland, that small but powerful butterfly-shaped gland located at the base of our neck, is the main regulator of our entire body's physiological orchestra. It produces hormones, T4 and T3, that control the rate at which we burn calories, our body temperature, and, very significantly, our heart rate and the strength of the heart's contractions. Thyroid health and heart health are so intimately intertwined that cardiologists often evaluate thyroid function as part of the workup for a patient presenting with certain types of arrhythmias, like atrial fibrillation or heart failure. This is where goitrogens come into play. Goitrogens are natural compounds found in certain foods, primarily in the family of cruciferous vegetables. This family includes nutritional powerhouses like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, and turnips. These vegetables are famous and celebrated for their impressive anti-cancer properties thanks to compounds like sulforaphane. However, they also contain these goitrogens, which have the ability to interfere with the normal function of the thyroid gland. The mechanism of action is as follows. The thyroid gland needs iodine, an essential trace element we get from our diet, to be able to manufacture its hormones. Goitrogens can inhibit the thyroid gland's ability to effectively absorb and utilize this iodine. If consumed in large quantities, especially in the context of an iodine intake that is already deficient or marginal, they can hinder the production of thyroid hormones. Over time, this can lead to a condition known as hypothyroidism, an underactive or sluggish thyroid, and in a desperate attempt to compensate for the lack of production, the gland may enlarge, forming what is known as a goiter, hence the name goitrogen. Hypothyroidism, even in its subclinical form, mild and often undiagnosed, has direct detrimental effects on the entire cardiovascular system. It slows the heart rate, bradycardia, can decrease the contractility of the heart muscle, making it less efficient, raises levels of LDL, bad, cholesterol, and triglycerides, and increases the stiffness of the arteries. All of these factors significantly increase the long-term risk of developing atherosclerosis, hypertension, and coronary artery disease. For a person over 60, whose cardiovascular system may already be vulnerable due to other factors, an undiagnosed or diet-exacerbated hypothyroidism can be a silent but very significant risk factor for a cardiac event. The hidden danger here lies in modern health trends. The enormous popularity of raw green juices and smoothies has led many well-intentioned people to consume massive quantities of cruciferous vegetables in their raw and most potent state. A person might think they are doing wonders for their health by drinking a liter of smoothie containing a whole bunch of raw kale, several heads of broccoli, and cabbage every day. While this may have certain benefits, it also represents an extremely high goitrogenic load for the thyroid. The good news is that this is perhaps the easiest danger on our entire list to mitigate. The solution is incredibly simple. Cooking. Heat deactivates the enzyme, myrosinase, that is responsible for activating the goitrogenic compounds. Steaming, boiling, sautéing, or roasting your cruciferous vegetables drastically reduces their goitrogenic potential, while largely preserving their other beneficial nutrients. Therefore, if you have a pre-existing thyroid condition, especially hypothyroidism, or if you have a strong family history of thyroid problems, you do not need to banish broccoli or cauliflower from your life. Simply make sure to consume them predominantly cooked rather than raw. And if you enjoy green smoothies, consider rotating your greens using lettuce, Swiss chard, which is not a crucifer, or parsley on some days instead of relying exclusively on raw kale. It's a small adjustment in your routine that can offer a great layer of protection for both your thyroid and, consequently, your heart. Number 5. Nightshades and silent inflammation. A controversial but relevant connection. We arrive at our final point, one that addresses a topic that generates intense debate in the worlds of nutrition and functional medicine. The nightshade family. This diverse group of plants includes some of the most consumed and beloved vegetables worldwide, tomatoes in all their forms, potatoes, important, not sweet potatoes which belong to another family, peppers, both sweet and hot, and eggplants. Interestingly, this family also includes very potent plants like tobacco and some poisonous plants like belladonna, which already gives us a clue that this family produces very potent biochemical compounds. These vegetables contain compounds called alkaloids, such as solanine in potatoes, which is especially concentrated when they are exposed to light and turn green, and tomatine in unripe green tomatoes. They also contain other bioactive substances like lectins. For decades, a growing number of people, especially those suffering from autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, or inflammatory bowel disease, have anecdotally reported that completely eliminating nightshades from their diet provides them with significant relief from their symptoms, primarily a reduction in joint pain, stiffness, and overall inflammation. The underlying theory is that for a genetically susceptible subset of the population, these compounds can irritate the delicate intestinal lining, contribute to increased intestinal permeability, the famous leaky gut condition, and consequently trigger or exacerbate a chronic inflammatory response throughout the body. Although mainstream science is still debating the extent and relevance of this effect in the general population, the concept of inflammation is absolutely central and fundamental to heart health. Today, we understand that atherosclerosis, the underlying cause of the vast majority of heart attacks and strokes, is not simply a disease of clogged pipes from cholesterol, as was previously believed. It is, fundamentally, a chronic inflammatory process. Low-grade, persistent, and silent inflammation in the walls of the arteries damages their lining, the endothelium, attracts immune cells, and promotes the formation of atherosclerotic plaque, a vulnerable plaque that can rupture or fissure, causing the formation of a clot that blocks blood flow. Anything that promotes systemic inflammation in the body, therefore, can theoretically contribute to heart disease. The hidden danger of nightshades, then, is not a universal danger. It is not a threat to everyone, but for that person over 60 who suffers from unexplained joint pain, morning stiffness, or chronic digestive issues, and who also has cardiac risk factors like hypertension or high cholesterol, there could be a hidden connection. It could be that their seemingly healthy diet, rich in tomato sauce, roasted potatoes, and sautéed peppers, is unknowingly fueling a silent inflammatory fire that affects both their joints and their arteries. Because this connection is so exquisitely individualized, the advice here is not for everyone to give up tomatoes and potatoes. That would be a mistake, as these foods are rich in incredibly valuable nutrients like lycopene, a potent antioxidant in tomatoes, and vitamin C in peppers. Instead, the approach should be self-observation and personal experimentation. If you suffer from inflammatory conditions and find no relief, it might be worthwhile to consider an elimination diet under the supervision of a doctor or a qualified nutritionist. This would involve eliminating all nightshades from your diet for a period of 3 to 4 weeks and carefully and objectively observing if your symptoms, pain, stiffness, swelling, digestive issues improve. If you observe a noticeable and significant improvement, it could be a strong indication that you are sensitive to them. Then, you could reintroduce them one by one every few days to identify the specific culprit or culprits. This N1 approach, an experiment with yourself as the sole subject, empowers you to discover which foods serve and nourish you, and which might be silently harming you. For your heart's health, reducing any source of chronic inflammation is a monumental victory. Identifying a sensitivity to nightshades could be a crucial and previously ignored piece of the complex puzzle of your long-term cardiovascular health. We have traveled a fascinating and revealing path, unveiling the complexities that often hide behind the foods we take for granted as universally good. The final message should not be one of fear or anxiety, but of empowerment through knowledge. Vegetables remain, and always will be, the cornerstone of a truly healthy diet. As we age, we must evolve from a generic approach to a wiser, more personalized, and conscious one. It's not about creating simplistic lists of good and bad foods, but about understanding the biochemical dance that occurs within us, how the compounds in food interact with our unique biology, our specific medications, and our current stage of life. Let's remember the key takeaways. Careful management of potassium if you take certain blood pressure medications. Striving for consistency in vitamin K intake if you are on anticoagulant therapy. Moderation with oxalate-rich foods if you are at risk for kidney stones. Cooking cruciferous vegetables to protect your thyroid and heart. And finally, practicing self-observation with nightshades if you suspect chronic inflammation is a problem for you. Talk to your doctor. Bring this knowledge to your next appointment. Don't be afraid to ask specific questions. Ask about your blood potassium levels, your latest INR result, your kidney and thyroid function. Share with them the changes you are considering making in your diet. Modern medicine works best when it is a collaboration, an alliance between an informed and proactive patient and a healthcare professional. You are the expert on your own body, and armed with the right information, you can take the reins of your heart health in a way you had never imagined before. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Protecting your heart is not just an act of health, it is the most important investment you can make in the quality and length of your future. If this video has opened your eyes to a new way of thinking about your diet and your health, I ask you to share it with your friends and family, especially with those who have passed the 60-year mark. You could be giving them information that literally changes their lives. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Were you surprised by any of these 5 points? Have you had any personal experience with these food interactions? We would love to read your story and learn from our community. Take great care, and we'll see you in the next video.